Stop scrolling right now. What I'm about to tell you could change how you feel every single day for the rest of your life. Before you think about your next meal, before you reach for medication, before you do anything else, I need you to understand something critical. That heaviness you feel when you wake up, that fog in your head by mid-afternoon, those numbers on your glucose meter that keep climbing even when you're doing everything right. None of that is random. And the reason nobody's told you the truth about what's actually happening inside your body is about to become crystal clear in the next few minutes. I'm Dr. Megan Foster. I've been a cardiologist for over 20 years, and I've watched thousands of people suffer needlessly because they were given incomplete information. Here's what nobody wants you to know. High blood sugar isn't just about what you eat. The entire conversation around blood sugar management is built on a foundation that ignores the real problem. You've been told to eat less sugar, try harder, restrict more. But that advice completely misses what's failing first in your body. The real issue has nothing to do with willpower. It's about cell communication, inflammation building silently, and blood vessel damage that's happening right now, long before your numbers spike high enough to scare you. That's exactly why so many people follow every rule perfectly and still watch their health decline. Think back for just a moment. There was a time when energy felt predictable, when you didn't obsess over glucose numbers, when eating a meal didn't come with anxiety, when your mood wasn't controlled by a device on your finger. Nothing changed overnight. It faded slowly, so slowly you barely noticed until one day you realized something was seriously off. That's exactly how metabolic problems develop. Quietly, invisibly, until they're impossible to ignore. Here's what I need you to hear clearly. This decline was not inevitable. It wasn't aging. It wasn't genetics. And it absolutely wasn't a personal failure on your part. Your body has been responding to signals, not punishing you for bad behavior. When the signals change, the response changes too. That's basic biology, and it's the key to everything we're going to talk about. Think of your metabolism like a highway system. Glucose is the traffic. Insulin is the traffic signal trying to direct that traffic. Your blood vessels are the roads themselves. Now imagine what happens when the road surface becomes damaged and inflamed. Signals don't reach where they need to go. Traffic backs up. Pressure builds throughout the entire system. Everything slows down to a crawl. That's why blood sugar rises even when you haven't eaten a single bite. It's not about more willpower or stricter control. It's about restoring flow to a damaged system. Large studies tracking thousands of people over decades show something remarkable. People with lower inflammation and better blood vessel function consistently have lower fasting glucose, better insulin response, and fewer complications, even when their diets look similar to everyone else's. Major research institutions studying metabolic disease now agree on something critical. Blood sugar control and artery health are completely inseparable. Fix one and the other improves. Ignore one and both deteriorate. It's that simple. This is where things get interesting, and I need you to stay with me because what comes next could save your life. There are 3 plant leaves, backed by real research, that support insulin signaling, regulate glucose absorption, and protect your arteries from damage. They're not exotic. They're not expensive. Most people completely overlook them because nobody's connecting the dots between what these plants do and why your blood sugar stays high. The number 1 leaf on this list works at the enzyme level where blood sugar spikes actually begin, before glucose even enters your bloodstream. I'll explain exactly how in just a moment. Quick pause here. If this information resonates with you, if you've been struggling with any of these issues, type the word clear in the comments below. Not for the algorithm, but so everyone watching realizes they're not alone in this fight. We're all figuring this out together, and your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to see today. Let's start with leaf number 3, bay leaf. Most people think it's just a cooking herb you toss into soup and then fish out before serving. What it actually does inside your body is far more important. Bay leaves contain specific compounds that improve how your cells respond to insulin. They reduce the oxidative stress building up inside your artery walls. They slow down how quickly glucose gets absorbed through fiber in your digestive tract. Clinical observations show measurable reductions in fasting glucose and improved markers of blood vessel health with regular use. How do you use it? 1 to 2 dried bay leaves steeped as tea, or simply used in cooked meals like you normally would. The most common mistake people make is thinking more is better. It's not. Moderate, consistent use is what matters. But here's the thing. Bay leaf mainly supports signaling. The next leaf changes absorption itself. Leaf number 2 is guava leaf. Most people dismiss this as folk medicine, something grandmothers used without understanding why. The unique role of guava leaf is that it slows how quickly glucose enters your bloodstream after you eat. It also protects the inner lining of your artery walls from oxidative damage, the exact kind of damage that leads to plaque buildup and heart disease. Research shows lower blood sugar spikes after meals and improved cholesterol profiles in people who use guava leaf consistently. The practical approach is simple. Guava leaf tea before meals. The most common mistake is using it once or twice and expecting miracles. Consistency is everything. Now we move from regulation to direct spike control, and this is where it gets really powerful. We're entering the heavy hitters now. The next leaf doesn't just support blood sugar management. It blocks the spike before it even starts. People often report calmer energy after meals, less brain fog, fewer energy crashes, and smoother glucose readings within just a few days. Not because of magic, but because digestion itself changes at a fundamental level. Before we go further, I need to address something important. No, this does not replace medication if you're currently on it. No, you don't need high doses to see benefits. And yes, gradual introduction matters more than aggressive dosing. If you're taking glucose-lowering medication, you need to monitor closely because these leaves can enhance the effects of your medication. Now let's talk about the top leaf on this list, mulberry leaf. This is the game changer. Mulberry leaf contains a natural compound called DNJ, which inhibits the enzymes that break down carbohydrates in your digestive tract. What does that mean in plain language? Sugar enters your bloodstream slower. Insulin doesn't have to spike as hard. Your arteries take less damage with every meal. Human studies show reductions of up to 40% in glucose spikes, significantly lower insulin demand, and better long-term metabolic stability. The reason most people fail is because they chase numbers on a screen instead of understanding the mechanisms driving those numbers. When you understand how mulberry leaf works, you stop chasing and start fixing the root cause. Here's your challenge for the next 30 days. Choose one leaf from this list, just one. Use it consistently every single day. Track how your body responds. Don't aim for perfection, aim for awareness. Notice what changes. Notice what stays the same. Write it down so you can see patterns you'd otherwise miss. If you've lived long enough to watch your body change, that doesn't mean decline is your destiny. It means you have experience. When experience meets understanding, when you stop fighting your body and start working with it, that's when real change happens. That's when the body responds in ways that surprise you. Now, let me expand on something critical that most people completely miss. The timing of when you use these leaves matters almost as much as using them in the first place. Bay leaf works best when consumed with meals because it slows glucose absorption as food breaks down. Guava leaf, on the other hand, shows maximum benefit when taken about 30 minutes before eating because it needs time to interact with your digestive enzymes. Mulberry leaf can work both ways, but the research suggests taking it just before your first bite gives you the strongest spike blunting effect. These small timing adjustments can be the difference between modest results and dramatic improvement. Let's talk about something nobody discusses enough. Why do these leaves work when so many supplements don't? The answer lies in bioavailability and synergy. Whole plant leaves contain hundreds of compounds that work together in ways we're only beginning to understand. When you isolate one compound and put it in a pill, you lose that synergy. You lose the supporting molecules that help your body absorb and use the active ingredients. Whole leaves, especially when prepared as tea, deliver a complex mixture your body recognizes and processes efficiently. This is why traditional medicine has used these plants for centuries, while modern isolated supplements often disappoint. Here's something fascinating about blood sugar that changes how you should think about managing it. Your fasting blood sugar, the number you see first thing in the morning before eating anything, is largely determined by what your liver does while you sleep. Your liver releases stored glucose throughout the night to keep your brain and organs functioning. When your liver becomes resistant to insulin signals, it releases too much glucose, and you wake up with high numbers despite not eating for 8 or 10 hours. This is called the dawn phenomenon, and it frustrates millions of people who can't understand why their morning numbers are worse than their bedtime numbers. Bay leaf and mulberry leaf both show promise in improving liver insulin sensitivity, which means they might help normalize that morning glucose release over time. Let me share something from my years in cardiology that connects directly to what we're discussing. When I look at angiograms, images of blood vessels from the inside, I can often predict someone's blood sugar control just by looking at their artery walls. Chronic high blood sugar leaves a signature. The walls become stiff, inflamed, and lined with plaque that narrows the passage. Blood pressure rises because the heart has to push harder through narrowed pipes. This creates a vicious cycle where high blood sugar damages arteries, damaged arteries raise blood pressure, high blood pressure damages organs, including the pancreas that makes insulin, and insulin production drops further. Breaking this cycle requires addressing inflammation and arterial damage, not just lowering glucose numbers. That's why guava leaf's ability to protect artery walls is so valuable. It interrupts the cycle at a critical point. The relationship between blood sugar and energy deserves more attention than it gets. When glucose can't enter your cells efficiently because of insulin resistance, it's like having a full tank of gas but a clogged fuel line. The energy is there, trapped in your bloodstream, but your cells are starving. This is why people with high blood sugar often feel exhausted, despite having plenty of glucose available. The fatigue isn't from lack of fuel. It's from fuel that can't reach where it's needed. When mulberry leaf slows glucose absorption and bay leaf improves insulin signaling, they're not just lowering numbers. They're helping energy reach your cells more efficiently, which is why people report feeling more energetic within days, even before their glucose numbers change significantly. Let's address a question I get constantly. How long does it take to see results? The honest answer is that it varies dramatically from person to person based on how damaged your metabolism is, how consistent you are, what else you're doing right or wrong, and frankly, factors we don't fully understand yet. Some people notice changes within a week. Others need 6 to 8 weeks of consistent use before they see measurable improvement. This is why I emphasize tracking and awareness. If you're not paying attention, you might miss subtle improvements that build over time. Better sleep, more stable mood, fewer cravings, less bloating. These often appear before your glucose meter shows dramatic changes, and they're every bit as important. One of the most overlooked aspects of blood sugar management is the role of chronic stress. When you're stressed, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones trigger your liver to dump glucose into your bloodstream because your body thinks you need energy to fight or run from danger. In our modern world, the danger is usually an email or a traffic jam, but your body doesn't know the difference. It floods your blood with glucose you don't need and can't use, driving your numbers up regardless of what you've eaten. This stress-induced glucose release is particularly harmful because it happens when insulin sensitivity is already low from the stress hormones themselves. Managing stress isn't optional if you're serious about blood sugar control. Deep breathing, walking, meditation, anything that lowers cortisol will help your numbers more than you'd expect. Here's a critical point about inflammation that ties everything together. Inflammation isn't just about swelling you can see. Chronic low-grade inflammation happens at the cellular level, invisible and silent, damaging tissues throughout your body for years before symptoms appear. This invisible inflammation is driven by factors like poor sleep, processed foods, sedentary lifestyle, chronic stress, and yes, high blood sugar itself. It's another vicious cycle. High blood sugar causes inflammation, inflammation worsens insulin resistance, insulin resistance drives blood sugar higher. The anti-inflammatory compounds in bay leaf, guava leaf, and mulberry leaf help break this cycle by reducing inflammation at multiple points. This is why their benefits extend beyond just lowering glucose numbers. They're addressing root causes, not just symptoms. Let's talk about what happens in your gut because this is where mulberry leaf really shines. When you eat carbohydrates, enzymes in your small intestine break them down into simple sugars that get absorbed into your bloodstream. The faster this happens, the higher and faster your blood sugar spikes. Mulberry leaf's DNJ compound mimics the structure of sugar molecules and essentially tricks those digestive enzymes. The enzymes waste time trying to break down DNJ instead of breaking down your actual food, which means glucose enters your bloodstream much more slowly. This isn't about eating less or restricting carbs. It's about changing how your body processes the carbs you do eat. The same meal that would cause a sharp spike without mulberry leaf causes a gentle rise with it. Over time, avoiding those sharp spikes means less insulin demand, less pancreas stress, and less arterial damage. Something important about guava leaf that deserves emphasis. The protective effect on artery walls isn't just about preventing future damage. There's emerging evidence that the antioxidants in guava leaf may actually help repair existing damage to some degree. The endothelium, the thin inner lining of your blood vessels, has some capacity to heal when you remove the factors damaging it and provide the right supporting nutrients. Guava leaf appears to do both. It reduces oxidative stress that damages the endothelium and provides compounds that support its repair. This is why some studies show improved blood flow and lower blood pressure after consistent guava leaf use. Healthier blood vessels mean better circulation, lower cardiovascular risk, and improved delivery of oxygen and nutrients to every organ in your body. Let me share a pattern I've observed over 2 decades of practice. The patients who succeed long-term with metabolic health are never the ones who make dramatic overnight changes. They're the ones who make small, sustainable adjustments and stick with them. They're the ones who understand that this is about gradually shifting their body's baseline, not achieving perfection. They don't beat themselves up over a bad day or a high reading. They look at trends over weeks and months, not day-to-day fluctuations. This mindset shift from perfection-seeking to consistency-focused is often more important than any supplement or medication. The leaves we're discussing work best in this context as part of a sustainable long-term approach, not a quick fix. Here's something fascinating about bay leaf that goes beyond blood sugar. Bay leaf contains compounds called parthenolides that have been studied for their effects on inflammatory pathways throughout the body. Inflammation in your joints, your gut, your brain, it's often driven by the same molecular pathways that cause inflammation in your blood vessels. This is why some people who start using bay leaf for blood sugar report unexpected improvements in joint pain or digestive issues. The body is interconnected in ways we're only beginning to map out. When you reduce systemic inflammation, benefits ripple outward in ways you might not predict. Let's discuss preparation methods because this matters more than most people realize. When you make tea from these leaves, water temperature and steeping time affect what compounds get extracted. Boiling water can destroy some delicate beneficial compounds while under extracting others that need heat to release. The optimal approach for most of these leaves is to bring water just to boiling, pour it over the leaves, cover the container to trap volatile compounds, and steep for 10 to 15 minutes. Longer doesn't necessarily mean stronger or better. Some bitter compounds that emerge with oversteeping might actually reduce the pleasant taste without adding benefits, making you less likely to stick with it. Consistency beats intensity every time. One question I hear often is whether these leaves interact with medications. The honest answer is that comprehensive interaction studies don't exist for most herb-drug combinations. We know mulberry leaf can enhance the glucose-lowering effects of diabetic medications, which means you might need to adjust your medication dose downward as your numbers improve. This must be done under medical supervision. Guava leaf can potentially interact with blood pressure medications since it may lower blood pressure on its own. Bay leaf is generally considered safe with most medications, but again, comprehensive data is limited. If you're on any medications, start with small amounts of one leaf at a time. Monitor your numbers closely and keep your doctor informed. Don't assume natural means risk-free. Natural means powerful, and powerful substances require respect. Here's a reality check about individual variation. Your neighbor might see dramatic results from mulberry leaf, while you see modest improvement. Your friend might love guava leaf tea, while you find it hard to tolerate. Your sister might respond best to bay leaf, while it does a little for you. This variation is normal and expected. We all have different genetic backgrounds, different gut bacteria that process these compounds differently, different levels of baseline damage, different lifestyles and stress levels affecting our results. Don't get discouraged if the first leaf you try doesn't work miracles immediately. This is exploration, not prescription. You're gathering data about your unique body. That data has value even when it shows you what doesn't work for you. Let's talk about the elephant in the room: cost and accessibility. One reason I chose these 3 leaves is because they're remarkably affordable compared to prescription medications or expensive supplements. Dried bay leaves are in every grocery store spice aisle for a few dollars. Dried guava leaves can be ordered online for roughly the cost of a fancy coffee. Mulberry leaf tea is slightly more expensive, but still far cheaper than most supplements. This isn't about selling you expensive products. It's about accessible, evidence-based options that work with your body's natural processes. The barrier to trying these isn't financial. It's informational. Most people simply don't know these options exist or how to use them effectively. Something critical about blood vessel health that connects to everything we've discussed. Your arteries are lined with a single layer of cells called the endothelium. This layer is 1 cell thick, incredibly delicate, and absolutely vital. It controls blood pressure by releasing molecules that make vessels relax or contract. It prevents blood clots by keeping blood flowing smoothly. It regulates inflammation and immune responses in the vessel wall. When the endothelium is damaged by high blood sugar, oxidative stress, and inflammation, all these functions fail. Blood pressure rises, clots form more easily, inflammation spirals out of control. Protecting this single cell layer is one of the most important things you can do for long-term health. This is why the arterial protective effects of guava leaf matter so much. You're not just managing numbers. You're protecting the physical structures that keep you alive. Here's a practical tip that multiplies the effectiveness of everything we've discussed. Combine these leaves with walking after meals. A 10 to 15-minute walk after eating, nothing intense, just a casual stroll, dramatically improves how your body handles the glucose from that meal. Your muscles use glucose without needing much insulin when they're active. This means lower blood sugar spikes, less insulin demand, and less stress on your pancreas. When you pair a post-meal walk with mulberry leaf tea before the meal, you're attacking the glucose spike from 2 angles. Mulberry slows absorption. Walking increases utilization. The combination is more powerful than either alone. This is what I mean by working with your body instead of against it. Let's address something that stops people before they start: the fear of changing too many things at once and not knowing what's working. This is valid. If you change your diet, start 3 new supplements, begin exercising, and improve your sleep all in the same week, you won't know which change drove your improvements. This is why I recommend starting with 1 leaf, just 1. Use it consistently for 2 to 4 weeks while changing nothing else. Track your numbers and how you feel. Then, if you want, add a second intervention. This methodical approach takes longer but gives you clear data about what works for your unique body. That knowledge is worth far more than rapid but confusing results. Something important about the cumulative nature of metabolic damage. Every blood sugar spike, every inflammatory burst, every moment of high oxidative stress causes a tiny amount of damage. One spike doesn't matter. 100 don't matter much. But thousands of spikes over years and decades, that's what creates disease. The damage accumulates silently until suddenly it's not silent anymore. This is why starting these interventions now, even if your numbers aren't terrible yet, is so valuable. You're preventing future damage, not just treating current symptoms. Prevention is invisible. You never see the heart attack that didn't happen or the amputation you avoided. But that invisible prevention is where the real victory lies. Let me share an observation about the psychology of chronic disease management. When you're told you have a lifelong condition that will only get worse, that requires constant vigilance and sacrifice, it's psychologically devastating. It robs you of hope. Many people unconsciously give up even while going through the motions of management. But when you understand that your body wants to heal, that it's responding to signals you can influence, that small, consistent actions can shift your trajectory, hope returns. And hope is physiologically active. It affects your stress hormones, your behaviors, your consistency, your outcomes. This information I'm sharing isn't just about leaves and blood sugar. It's about restoring hope that improvement is possible. Because it is. Here's a sophisticated concept explained simply. Your mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside each cell, are deeply affected by blood sugar control. When glucose floods your cells erratically with repeated spikes, mitochondria get overwhelmed and damaged. Damaged mitochondria produce less energy and more inflammatory waste products. This creates fatigue and more inflammation, worsening insulin resistance and blood sugar control. It's yet another vicious cycle. The steady controlled glucose delivery enabled by mulberry leaf and the reduced inflammation from all three leaves helps protect mitochondrial function. Healthier mitochondria mean more energy, less inflammation, better insulin sensitivity, and improved blood sugar control. Everything is connected to everything else. Let's talk about realistic expectations because this matters enormously. These leaves are not going to take a fasting blood sugar of 200 down to 90 in a week. They're not going to reverse 20 years of damage in 30 days. What they can do with consistent use is gradually shift your baseline in a healthier direction. A fasting glucose that averages 140 might drop to 125 over 2 months. Post-meal spikes of 200 might come down to 160. These changes seem modest on paper, but they're profound in terms of cumulative damage prevented. A 10 or 20-point improvement maintained over years translates to dramatically lower risk of complications. Don't dismiss gradual improvement as inadequate. Gradual is often more sustainable and physiologically sound than dramatic. Something about sleep that deserves more attention in this conversation. Poor sleep wrecks blood sugar control through multiple pathways. It raises cortisol. It increases hunger hormones and decreases satiety hormones, making you crave junk food. It reduces insulin sensitivity directly. It impairs judgment and willpower, making you more likely to make poor food choices. One night of terrible sleep can raise your fasting glucose by 20 or 30 points. Chronic poor sleep creates chronically elevated glucose. If you're doing everything else right but sleeping poorly, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. Improving sleep might do more for your numbers than any supplement. This is why I emphasize a comprehensive approach. The leaves help, but they work best in the context of adequate sleep, stress management, basic movement, and reasonable food choices. Here's something about cultural wisdom that Western medicine often dismisses too quickly. These leaves have been used in traditional medicine systems for centuries across different cultures. Mulberry leaf in traditional Chinese medicine, guava leaf in Caribbean and South American traditional practices, bay leaf in Mediterranean and Middle Eastern traditions. They persisted across generations because they worked well enough that people kept using them. Modern research is now confirming many of these traditional uses with clinical data. This doesn't mean everything traditional is valid, but it means we should pay attention when multiple independent cultures arrived at similar conclusions about a plant's benefits. There's wisdom in that pattern. Let me address the people who've tried everything and feel hopeless. I see you. I've worked with hundreds of people who felt exactly the same way. What I've learned is that hopelessness often comes from trying interventions in isolation without understanding the bigger picture. You tried a low-carb diet but ignored sleep and stress. You took medications but didn't address inflammation. You exercised but ate foods that spiked your glucose repeatedly. None of these alone is enough because the problem is systemic. When you start addressing multiple factors simultaneously, even with small actions in each area, the combined effect is often far greater than the sum of individual effects. One leaf, plus better sleep, plus a short daily walk, plus slightly less processed food, creates synergy. That synergy is where breakthroughs happen. Here's a tactical point about monitoring that most people get wrong. Checking your blood sugar once a day at random times gives you very little useful information. You're just collecting disconnected data points. Strategic monitoring means checking fasting glucose every morning to track your baseline, checking before and 2 hours after meals to see how different foods affect you, checking before bed to understand overnight patterns. This strategic data tells a story. It shows you what's working and what isn't. It reveals patterns you'd never see otherwise. If you're going to put a needle in your finger, make sure the data you get is actually useful. Random checks are almost worthless. Patterned checks are gold. Something important about the difference between managing disease and building health. These are not the same thing. Managing disease is defensive. It's about preventing things from getting worse. Building health is offensive. It's about making things actively better. Too many people spend all their energy on disease management, trying to hold the line, and none on actually building health. The levers we've discussed, combined with sleep, stress reduction, movement, and reasonable nutrition, they build health. They don't just slow decline, they actively improve function. This shift from defensive to offensive, from managing to building, changes everything about how you approach each day. Let me share what happens in the next video because you need to know this before you start using these leaves. There's one common habit, something almost everyone does without thinking, that cancels out the benefits of all three leaves we've discussed. It's not what you'd expect. It's not about food or exercise. And when you eliminate this habit, the effectiveness of everything else you're doing multiplies. I'll explain exactly what it is, why it matters so much, and how to fix it in the next video. Make sure you don't miss it because this could be the missing piece you've been looking for. Take care of yourself. Your body is more resilient than you've been told, more responsive than you believe, more capable of improvement than the conventional wisdom suggests. You're not broken. You're responding to signals. Change the signals and you change the response. It's that fundamental. Before I let you go, there are a few more critical insights I need to share that could make the difference between modest improvement and remarkable transformation. These are the things I wish every patient understood from day one. Let's talk about hydration because this is wildly underestimated in blood sugar management. When you're dehydrated, your blood becomes more concentrated, which means the glucose in your blood becomes more concentrated too. Your meter reads higher numbers simply because there's less water diluting the glucose. Beyond that, dehydration impairs kidney function, and your kidneys are responsible for filtering excess glucose out of your blood. When they're not working optimally, glucose builds up. Chronic mild dehydration, the kind where you're not desperately thirsty, but you're not well hydrated either, can keep your numbers elevated by 10 to 20 points all day, every day. The fix is simple. Drink water consistently throughout the day. Not juice, not soda, not even tea all the time. Plain water. Half your body weight in ounces is a reasonable target for most people. This simple habit supports everything else you're doing. Here's something about meal composition that changes how these leaves work. If you eat a meal that's pure carbohydrates, bread and pasta and sugar, even mulberry leaf can only do so much to blunt that spike. But if you eat balanced meals with protein, healthy fats, and fiber alongside your carbs, now the mulberry leaf works synergistically with the natural slowing effects of protein and fat. The combination is powerful. This is why I never recommend using these leaves as permission to eat recklessly. They work with your efforts, not instead of them. A balanced plate plus mulberry leaf tea creates steady glucose levels. A junk food meal plus mulberry leaf just creates a slightly less terrible spike. Context matters. Let me address the people who are skeptical of natural remedies. I understand that skepticism. I'm a medical doctor. I was trained in evidence-based medicine. I spent years dismissing anything that wasn't a pharmaceutical drug as unscientific folk medicine. What changed my perspective was seeing the research accumulate and seeing patients improve when nothing else had worked. These leaves have clinical studies behind them. Not as many as major drugs, true, but enough to demonstrate mechanisms of action and measurable benefits. Skepticism is healthy. Closed-mindedness is not. I'm asking you to try something safe and inexpensive for 30 days and see what happens in your own body. Your body's response is the best evidence that exists. Something fascinating about the gut microbiome's role in all of this. Your gut contains trillions of bacteria, and different species process nutrients differently. Some bacterial species are extremely efficient at extracting every calorie and every bit of glucose from food. Others are less efficient. People with more of the efficient bacteria tend to gain weight more easily and have higher blood sugar from the same foods. The compounds in these leaves, particularly the fiber and polyphenols, feed beneficial bacteria that improve metabolic health while creating an environment less favorable for the glucose-extracting species. Over weeks and months of consistent use, your microbiome shifts. This shift affects how much glucose you absorb, how much inflammation you produce, and how well your metabolism functions. You're not just affecting today's blood sugar. You're gradually reshaping your internal ecosystem. Here's a practical point about combining these leaves. Some people wonder if they should use all three at once or one at a time. My recommendation for most people is to start with one. Establish a baseline, see how you respond, then consider adding a second if you want additional benefits. Using all three from day one isn't necessarily better. It makes it harder to know what's helping and increases the chance of digestive upset as your body adjusts. That said, there's no inherent danger in combining them. Traditional medicine systems often use multiple herbs together for synergistic effects. If you do combine them, start with lower doses of each and increase gradually. Listen to your body. It will tell you if you're overdoing it through digestive discomfort or other signals. Let's discuss the role of muscle mass in blood sugar control because this is criminally underappreciated. Your muscles are the primary site where glucose gets used. More muscle mass means more glucose storage capacity and more insulin sensitivity. This is why resistance training, building, and maintaining muscle is one of the most powerful interventions for blood sugar control. You don't need to become a bodybuilder. Simple bodyweight exercises, resistance bands, light weights, anything that challenges your muscles helps. 2 or 3 sessions per week of 20 to 30 minutes can dramatically improve your numbers over time. Combined with the leaves we've discussed, you're addressing the problem from multiple angles. The leaves improve how glucose is absorbed and processed. The muscle improves where it goes and how it's used. Together, they create powerful synergy. Something about alcohol that needs to be said. Alcohol impairs your liver's ability to regulate blood sugar. It can cause dangerous drops if you're on certain medications. It disrupts sleep, which wrecks blood sugar control the next day. It impairs judgment, leading to poor food choices. It contributes to inflammation. I'm not saying you can never have a drink, but I am saying that regular alcohol consumption makes blood sugar management significantly harder. If you're struggling with your numbers and drinking regularly, that might be a bigger factor than you realize. Many of my patients who cut out alcohol or reduced to occasional use saw improvements they hadn't achieved through any other intervention. It's worth considering, honestly. Here's something about emotional eating and stress eating that connects to blood sugar in ways people don't realize. When you eat for emotional reasons rather than hunger, you're usually choosing foods that spike blood sugar dramatically. Cookies, ice cream, chips, comfort foods are almost always high glycemic. The spike feels good temporarily because it triggers dopamine release, but it's followed by a crash that makes you feel worse, leading to more stress eating. It's a vicious cycle driven by blood sugar instability. When you stabilize blood sugar through the strategies we've discussed, cravings often diminish naturally. It becomes easier to make rational food choices instead of being driven by crashes and cravings. The physical stability creates space for emotional stability. Let me share an advanced concept about glycation. When glucose stays elevated in your blood, it sticks to proteins throughout your body in a process called glycation. These glycated proteins, called advanced glycation end products or AGEs, damage tissues everywhere. They stiffen your arteries, cloud your eye lenses, leading to cataracts, damage kidney filters, create nerve damage. This glycation is why high blood sugar causes complications over time. It's not just the glucose itself, it's what glucose does when it sticks to proteins it shouldn't stick to. Every day you keep your blood sugar lower, you're creating fewer AGEs and giving your body a chance to clear existing ones. The cumulative effect over years is the difference between healthy aging and disease-accelerated aging. Here's a tactical tip about timing your leaf use around exercise. If you take mulberry leaf before exercise, it might slow glucose absorption so much that you don't have enough readily available energy for your workout. This can lead to fatigue and poor performance. A better strategy for active people is to use mulberry leaf with sedentary meals, the ones where you'll be sitting afterward, but skip it before workouts when you want that glucose available. Guava leaf and bay leaf don't seem to have the same issue and can be used anytime. This is the kind of nuance you learn by paying attention to your body's responses in different contexts, something about the connection between blood sugar and mental clarity that deserves emphasis. Your brain runs almost exclusively on glucose. When blood sugar swings wildly, your brain's fuel supply becomes unreliable. This creates brain fog, difficulty concentrating, mood swings, and poor decision-making. When you stabilize blood sugar, many people report that the mental benefits are even more noticeable than the physical ones. Clearer thinking, better focus, more stable mood, improved memory. These aren't separate issues from blood sugar. They're direct consequences of fuel stability in the brain. The leaves help create that stability. Let's address the question of how to know if these leaves are working. Beyond checking your glucose meter, pay attention to subtler signs. Do you wake up feeling more rested? Is your energy more consistent throughout the day? Are you less irritable? Do you have fewer cravings? Is your hunger more predictable rather than sudden and intense? Are you sleeping better? These subjective markers often improve before your glucose numbers change dramatically, and they're just as important. Quality of life matters more than numbers on a screen. Numbers are just proxies for how you actually feel and function. Here's something about seasonal variation that most people never consider. Your blood sugar control tends to be worse in winter and better in summer for several reasons. Less sunlight affects vitamin D levels and mood, both of which influence insulin sensitivity. Colder weather means less outdoor activity. Holiday foods and stress, reduced fresh produce in many diets. If you notice your numbers creeping up in winter, it's not your imagination. Adjust your strategies seasonally. Maybe you use these leaves more consistently in winter when you need extra support. Maybe you're more careful about indoor exercise when it's too cold to walk outside. Awareness of these patterns helps you stay ahead of problems instead of reacting after they develop. Let me talk about the role of inflammation and insulin resistance because understanding this changes everything. Inflammation literally blocks insulin signaling. Inflammatory molecules interfere with the receptors on your cells that respond to insulin. This means insulin can be present in your blood, but unable to do its job because the communication pathway is blocked. This is why people with chronic inflammation from any source tend to develop insulin resistance and high blood sugar. The anti-inflammatory effects of all three leaves address this root cause. You're not just lowering glucose, you're removing the inflammatory blocks that prevent insulin from working properly. This is mechanistic medicine, not just symptom management. Something practical about tracking that goes beyond numbers. Keep a journal where you note not just glucose readings, but what you ate, how you slept, your stress level that day, whether you exercised, how you felt. After a few weeks, patterns emerge that you would never see looking at glucose numbers alone. You might discover that poor sleep affects you more than food choices, or that stress spikes your numbers more than carbs do, or that a particular combination of foods causes problems while each food separately is fine. This personalized data is far more valuable than generic advice because it's about your unique body and circumstances. Here's a perspective shift that helps many people. Stop thinking of high blood sugar as the problem and start seeing it as a symptom. The real problems are inflammation, insulin resistance, oxidative stress, and vascular damage. High blood sugar is just the visible marker of these hidden issues. When you treat the root problems, the symptom resolves naturally. This is why I focus on leaves that reduce inflammation and protect blood vessels, not just lower glucose. We're going deeper than symptom management. We're addressing causes. Let me share something about the relationship between body fat and blood sugar that's more nuanced than calories in, calories out. Fat tissue, especially around your abdomen, isn't just storage. It's an active endocrine organ that releases inflammatory signals and hormones that worsen insulin resistance. This is why losing even modest amounts of abdominal fat often improves blood sugar more than expected from the calorie deficit alone. You're reducing an active source of inflammation and insulin resistance. The leaves can support this process by reducing inflammation and improving metabolic efficiency, but they work best in combination with efforts to reduce inflammatory fat tissue through reasonable calorie balance and activity. Here's something about the power of small, consistent actions over dramatic temporary efforts. A person who uses one leaf every single day and walks 10 minutes after dinner will achieve far more than someone who does an intense intervention for 2 weeks and then burns out. Your body responds to sustained signals, not occasional heroic efforts. This is liberating because it means you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent with small, reasonable actions. That's achievable. That's sustainable. And sustainability is what creates lasting results. Something about medication that needs to be addressed directly. If you're on blood sugar medication, these leaves can enhance its effects. This means your medication might become too strong, potentially causing dangerous low blood sugar. You need to work with your doctor to adjust doses as your numbers improve. Don't stop medication on your own. Don't assume you don't need it anymore because you're using leaves. Medication and natural interventions can work together, but they need to be coordinated carefully. Your doctor needs to know what you're doing so they can monitor appropriately and adjust your treatment plan safely. Let's talk about what success actually looks like, because many people have unrealistic expectations. Success isn't never having high blood sugar again. It's having lower average blood sugar and less variability. Success isn't eliminating medication overnight. It's potentially reducing doses over time under medical supervision. Success isn't feeling perfect every day. It's feeling noticeably better most days than you did before. Redefine success as meaningful improvement, not perfection, and you'll be far more likely to achieve it and sustain it. Here's a final thought about hope versus hype. I'm not promising miracles, I'm not claiming these leaves will cure diabetes or eliminate all your problems. What I'm offering is evidence based information about safe, accessible interventions that can improve your metabolic health as part of a comprehensive approach. They work, they help, they matter, but they're tools, not magic. Use them wisely, consistently, and in context with other healthy choices, and you'll see benefits. Expect them to do all the work while you change nothing else, and you'll be disappointed. This distinction between hope and hype matters. Hope is realistic optimism based on evidence. Hype is unrealistic promises based on marketing. I'm giving you hope. I'm Dr. Megan. I'll see you in the next video.